Hello, and welcome to my YouTube channel for another installment of Afri-Culture Concepts. I want to thank those that have continued to show a passion in African history and prehistory by staying tuned with the content released by this channel. Today, we will be taking a look into the early Holocene epoch of Nilo-Saharan Northeast Africa and reconstructing events that led up to the Jebel Sahabah massacre and the events of the massacre itself, the possible participants in the massacre, using anthropology in order to gain a better understanding of how the gradual aridification of the Green Sahara affected Africans on a continental level. Now let's delve into conflicts of prehistoric super-Saharan Africans of the Nile Valley when the Green Sahara began to dry up during the early Holocene epoch. Jebel Sahabah is the anthropological site of an ancient cemetery located in northern Sudan, where super-Saharan Proto-Nubians and Proto-Egyptians emerged and occupied this area sometime around the end of the Pleistocene epoch and around the beginning of the Holocene epoch. A paper released in 2021 by Isabelle Crèvecoeur, Marie-Helene Diaz-Marinho, Antoine Zazo, Daniel Antoine, and François Bon called New Insights on Interpersonal Violence in the Late Pleistocene, based on the Nile Valley Cemetery of Jebel Sahabah, goes into detail about the types of tools used during these attacks, the types of injuries that were sustained by these attacks, the ages and genders that were victims of these attacks, and a lot more important details one should know in order to gain a full grasp on the subject at hand. The end of the Late Pleistocene and the beginning of the Holocene were marked by major climatic changes whose impact on human populations is still poorly understood. In the Nile Valley, climatic conditions are depicted as hyper-arid during the second half of the Late Pleistocene. Around 15 to 14,000 years ago, the sudden overflow of Lake Victoria into the White Nile establishes the present Nile flow regime, causing regular and severe flooding all the way down to Egypt. Only after the Younger Dryas do the monsoon conditions of the African humid period start to stabilize. There is little evidence for human occupations at the end of the Late Pleistocene, 18 to 11, called in the Nile Valley, with sites restricted to the floodplain of Upper Egypt and Nubia. Of these, few have yielded complete human remains. These include Jebel Sahabah, Tushka, Wadi Kabania, Wadi Halfa. Culturally, different lithic industries have been identified with sites associated to the end of the Late Pleistocene. These occur in restricted geographical areas along the Nile, namely in Upper Egypt. They do not seem to be related to specific activities and are defined by characteristic sets of lithic tools and/or technology that appear to be associated with distinct small hunting, fishing, gathering groups. Each of these lithic groups is believed to represent a cultural tradition that reflects group identity. The occurrence of large graveyards at the end of the Late Pleistocene reinforces the idea of strong social units within these residential groups. Set in the context of possible environmental pressures and geographical constraints, the identification of traces of interpersonal violence on the individuals buried in Jebel Sahabah have attracted much attention. Evidence of conflicts is not uncommon in the Nile Valley. The oldest documented case appears to be from Wadi Kabania, where the remains of a partial skeleton belonging to a young adult male provides early evidence of interpersonal violence. Embedded lithic and healed fractures have also been documented on some individuals buried in the Wadi Halfa cemetery, associated with Kadan lithic industry. However, the most emblematic and widely cited example of early widespread violence is the cemetery of Jebel Sahabah funerary complex from the Nile Valley. Early analyses of the skeletons by Anderson and Butler revealed evidence of interpersonal violence on the bones of at least half of the Jebel Sahabah individuals. In addition, abundant lithic artifacts from the Kadan industry were discovered within the physical space of the bodies, where the soft tissues would have once been, or directly embedded in the bones. Given their position, these lithic artifacts cannot be considered to be great goods, nor can the Jebel Sahabah individuals be referred to as belonging to a Kadan population, particularly as other cultural entities are present in Lower Nubia during the same period, confirming the diversification of the prehistoric Nile Valley region thousands of years before the emergence of pre-dynastic Egypt. Figure 1 shows the location of the Jebel Sahabah cemetery, site 117, in the Nile Valley, and map of the excavated area and burials. Red dots, individuals exhibiting signs of violence and/or traumatic lesions. Orange dots on newly identified lesions in the latter individuals. Green dots, individuals newly identified as showing signs of violence and/or traumatic lesions. Table 1 displays the number of individuals exhibiting at least one type of lesion grouped by age at death or sexual diagnosis. The percentage in the two first lines are calculated on the minimal number of individuals for each category, while the percentage in the numbered bold lines are computed based on the recorded number of individuals with lesions for each category. The percentage in the underlying lines represents the proportion of individuals with healed, unhealed, and unhealed lesion occurrence within the numbered line category. N equal number, percent equal percentage, PIM equal projectile impact mark, HNU equal healed and unhealed, gun, equal mature individuals whose sexual diagnosis is undetermined. The embedded chips were originally found in the 7th cervical vertebrae and in the left pubis, with the bone around both lithics showing severe reactive changes. Unfortunately, these bones are not part of the collection donated to the British Museum. The lesions observed on JS-31 are located on the infracranial skeleton. Our reassessment revealed previously unidentified healed and unhealed projectile impact marks, as well as healed lesions that are most probably the result of earlier interpersonal injuries. The new unhealed PIMs identified include a puncture with crushing, faulting, and faking of the bone surface on the anterior part of the left scapula, and a deep V-shaped drag on the posterior medial side of the humerus. JS-31 also has a heel fracture of the distal extremity of the right first metacarpal. Finally, the right femur offers further evidence of healed lesions, with the presence of a bone callus on the lateral side of the proximal part of the shaft, and of a healed projectile wound on the anterior side at mid-shaft. Three previously unidentified embedded lithic chips were found trapped in the healing bulge of the latter. The third case, JS-44, are the remains of a possible female that appears to have been older than 30 years. 21 lithic artifacts were found in close association with the skeleton, one of which was embedded in the fourth rib. Windorf also noted 2 examples of chip and slash or fake alignments during the excavation, which he interpreted as evidence of composite projectile use. The fourth rib with embedded back fake is, unfortunately, also not present in the British Museum Windorf collection. As with JS-31, all the lesions observed on JS-44 are located in the infracranial skeleton, Fig. 4, with healed fractures present on the left clavicle, right ulna and radius, and one left rib. The fracture of the left clavicle shaft, located on the chromial end of the diaphysis, reveals a slight torsion and a displacement of the bone fragments. The right forearm heel fracture is oblique, with a displacement, translation, and rotation of the 2 broken pieces. Fig. 4-1, the clavicle and forearm fractures most probably occurred during the same event. Given the oblique nature in the forearm and the chromial involvement in the clavicle, they may have been caused by an indirect trauma, such as a bad fall, rather than a defensive perifracture. Figure 2 illustrates the location and images of the observed osseous lesions on JS-14. Center, schematic scheme of JS-14 as skeletal preservation. Gray parts represent preserved bones, star equal blunt frustroma, full star equal unhealed puncture, open circle equal perforations, yellow diamond equal embedded artifact in a puncture, dash equal drags traces of projectile impacts, line equal cut mark. Box Sin Degree 1. Lesions of the frontal bone on JS-14. Left, superior view of the frontal bone with below the magnification in frontal view of the red box showing the blunt frustroma and the embedded lithic, wide oval with hinge fractures. Right, left lateral view of the frontal bone displaying the projectile perforation. Red and white stars are reference points for the magnified area. Equal hinge fractures at the level of the entrance of the projectile. B equal crushing fractures on the border of the perforation. C equal endocranial view of the internal bevel. Note the misglued piece of bone associated to the perforation, part of the original conservation works. Box Sin Degree 2, projectile impact marks on the left femur of JS-14. Left, anterior view of the preserved part of the left femur. Equal close-up on the 2 set of drag marks located on the anterolateral side of the shaft. White star put as reference point for the magnified area. B equal detailed view of the superior drag revealing the wide fat bottom of the groove and the parallel microstriations. Figure 3 indicates the location and images of the observed osseous lesions on JS-31. Center, schematic scheme of JS-31 skeletal preservation. Gray parts represent preserved bones. Striped areas are missing bone or areas, full star equal unhealed puncture, dash equal drags traces of projectile impacts, line equal cut mark, plus sign equal healed lesions, time sign equal healed fracture, full circle equal healed puncture, yellow diamond equal embedded artifact in a puncture, orange diamond equal embedded artifact in lost bone. Equal red rectangle close-up of the heel projectile injury with red and white stars as reference points for the magnified area B and C. B equal microscopic view of the 3 embedded lithic chips marked by arrows. C equal microscopic view of a bony bridge separating 2 geometric marks indicating the presence of 2 lost lithic chips, magnification multiplied 50. Box Sin Degree 1, projectile impact puncture on the left scapula of JS-31. Equal red rectangle close-up on the subscapular fossa showing a puncture associated with faking and faulting. B equal composite microscopic image of the puncture displaying the crushing of the bone in the lower border of the puncture, magnification multiplied 40. Box Sin Degree 2, healed lesions on the right femur of JS-31. Red rectangle equal healed projectile lesion, black ellipse equal bone callus. Equal red rectangle close-up of the heel projectile injury with red and white stars as reference points for the magnified area B and C. B equal microscopic view of the 3 embedded lithic chips marked by arrows. C equal microscopic view of a bony bridge separating 2 geometric marks indicating the presence of 2 lost lithic chips, magnification multiplied 50. Figure 4 displays the location and images of the observed osseous lesions on JS-44. Center, schematic scheme of JS-44 skeletal preservation. Gray parts represent preserved bones. Striped areas are missing bone. Crisscross areas are bone whose exact anatomical position is unknown. Full star equal unhealed puncture. Dash equal drags traces of projectile impacts. Time sign equal heel fracture. Yellow diamond equal embedded artifact in a puncture. Orange diamond equal embedded artifact in lost bone. Box in degree 1, heel fractures on JS44. From top to bottom, left clavicle superior view, right radius anterior view, and right ulnar anterior view. Box in degree 2, lateral view of the left pelvis of JS44 with a projectile impact puncture with an embedded lithic fate. The equal red rectangle close-up of the PMI with white star as reference point for the magnified area B. The equal microscopic view of the puncture showing the laminated aspect of the superior border, and the lithic artifact inside the puncture indicated by the red arrow magnification 30x. Box in degree 3, double parallel drags on JS44 located on the posterior surface of the right femur diaphysis, at the level where the lateral supracondylar line, which delimitates the lateral part of the popliteal plane, meets the lateral side of the femoral diaphysis. The equal red rectangle close-up showing the two parallel drags in the direction of the projectile with the arrows. White star as reference point for the magnified area B. The equal microscopic close-up on the distal drag showing the faking of the superior border at the origin of the drag. Red star as reference point for the magnified area C. Magnification multiplied 45. C equal composite microscopic view of the proximal part of the distal drag displaying the wide fat bottom of the groove and the parallel microstriations magnification multiplied 235. Around these times within the ancient Sahara, approximately 11 to 8,800 BC, there was much diversity of Africans within the confines of the Nile Valley with pastoralist populations and hunting, fishing, and gathering populations living in close vicinity to Neolithic agriculturalists, probably Nilo-Saharan, and Afro-Asiatic speakers side by side, sometimes even intermarrying each other at times. Certainly the northern Sudan area was a major ethnic interface between these two different groups at around this period. Indeed, the remains of the Afro-Asiatic originating population group has even been found 200 miles south of Jebel, Sahabah, possibly confirming the Lower Nubian floodplain as a major point of transaction for these groups. As you can see, these different lifestyles in close vicinity would eventually lead to a conflict of interest between the diverse populations. These conflicts of interest later evolved into a series of armed conflicts between these diverse populations. When resources like water sources and vegetation started to wear away due to the aridification of the Green Sahara, tensions started to boil between these populations. People that were probably once more isolated from each other began to move into the eastern bank of the Nile Valley. Some sources try to say that this was the earliest race war, but that is obviously an injection of modern ideas into something that is very ancient. Due to the fact that these populations lived in close vicinity for a while before tensions started to boil, it is hard to say that this was ethnically or racially motivated. Instead, the climactic conditions leads us to believe that it was more than likely a competition of scant resources. As you can see from the other videos produced by this YouTube channel, when it came to resources, people that have more homogeneous origins or homogeneous morphological appearances will in fact go to war or compete for resources. For instance, the massacre in Lake Turkana, in the modern country of Kenya, where there may have been less biodiversity and less cultural diversity. Prehistoric hunter-gatherers went to war in order to sustain natural resources for themselves to thrive as separate people groups and cultures. With that being said, I want to thank you again for tuning in for another installment of Afri-Culture Concepts. Please let me know how you feel about this video, or if you have any more information to add to the conversation, leave a comment. Also, please like, share, and subscribe to help this content reach other YouTube algorithms so this channel can grow and we can spread more accurate information across the web. Thanks guys. Peace.